Hello, and welcome back to plantcare.club, where we care about your plants. My name is Fred, and on this show we do three things. Number one, we talk about your plants, indoor, outdoor, whatever you have, plants for your garden. We're in the garden series right now, so we're talking about plants for your garden, what you're going to put on your patio, your deck, anything like that, hanging baskets, all of those great things as you lead into the spring. Number two, we do product reviews, talk about pots, soil, new plants coming to the market, whatever there is. So if you have any suggestions, you want something that you want us to review or take a look at, let us know and we can get back to you. We'll do our research on it. And number three, we answer your questions. So if you are listening to this and you think, I have a couple of questions that I want to ask, head to plantcare.club, fill out our question form, and we'll either get back to you over email or we will answer it on a future show. So, who am I? I'm Fred. I have about 6 years in the horticultural space. In a greenhouse, we grow annuals in the spring. We do poinsettias, garden mums. We also have some tropicals. We send them across Canada and the United States. Now, the goal of the show is to take this information that we have in the greenhouse, in the nursery, in the professional growing environment, professional growing world, and then translate that into how you can apply it to your own home. So giving you the tips and what growers would look for when they are actually implementing these things into their own garden or buying plants for their house. Well, maybe they don't buy plants for their house, but they're picking out which plants they want for their house. Those sort of things. So, as I mentioned, we are talking about the plants that you're going to put into your garden or around your deck, patio, by the pool, whatever you're looking for this spring. And today we wanted to talk about sun versus shade plants. So as you can see around me, if you're listening, I have a couple of pictures of some sun coming through over the mountains. Very nice. Very nice, very nice look. Anyway, so why? Why do we have some plants that are better in the sun and some plants that are better in the shade? You would think that it's a plant, so it all wants sun. So why are some a little bit more desperate for extra sunlight and some are looking for a little bit less? Well, it really comes down to the different genetics, and it has to do with how a plant is going to perform. If shade plants are put directly into the sun, then they're likely going to burn. They're likely going to get a bunch of maybe little black spots on the leaves. They drop some leaves. Maybe they just die altogether because they can't handle that kind of a shock. If sun plants are left in the shade, they might underperform. They might not really produce many flowers. They might not grow to the right size. They're just going to be a little bit more sluggish. They're going to be underwhelming, really. They're going to be a little bit more boring. Something that's important to note is that the plant is really going into shock if you are taking a plant from the sunlight to the shade. So when we're talking about houseplants, often one of the steps when we're trying to diagnose what's wrong with a plant is we say, okay, well, has the season changed in your area? Or have your plants been under grow lights and now they're no longer under grow lights? Or are they near a window and they were getting some direct light coming in and then they were moved, or they were moved into a spot with direct light? We see this all the time with houseplants because houseplants are very accustomed to the environment that they're being grown in. And a plant is just getting into the routine. It knows, okay, here's my schedule, here's the day, here's exactly what's going to go on. And then when it gets thrown into a different environment, like having a lot more sunlight or a lot less sunlight, all of a sudden, boom, it goes into shock. So we have to be cognizant of that when we are working with some of the plants that we put in front of in our garden, on our deck, patio, whatever we're going to purchase. You got to remember that those plants can go through the same kind of thing. I'll throw another wrench into this too, is sometimes you have plants that are coming from completely different climates versus where you are. So when a lot of tropicals come from, and by tropicals I'll say palms, ferns, mandevilla, those kind of items, when they're coming from a really deep south, let's say Florida or Georgia or California, those kind of areas, and then they're moving very far north, they're coming all the way up to New York or Canada or Pennsylvania, anywhere in there, even further north, and they're going to be sold in the month of May. Well, they've grown up really in these really high light level conditions down in the south, and they're really getting used to that. Then they're sent up, and even though we're getting more light in the northern part of the northern hemisphere, we still aren't getting the same light intensity and direct light that you are in these other southern states. So when you're purchasing a plant like that, sometimes the growers will actually bring in the plants from Florida or wherever they're getting them from, put them into a greenhouse, let them acclimatize, is what they call it, for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however long they can really justify holding onto the plants. Let them sit there, really get used to the conditions, and then ship them out to the stores after that. That's a way that the grower is really making sure that the plant is going to be a little bit more adjusted to the conditions that it's about to face. But it's something to keep in mind. If you're going out and you're buying a tropical plant and it doesn't look so great right off the bat, maybe it's just in shock. Maybe that's really what it's gone through here. Is it's in a shock state. Okay, so I went a little bit long on that part, but now we're going to talk about some shade plants. So generic shade plants or great shade plants for your garden. First off, I've got Rieger begonias here just above my head. They are an awesome plant that you can put into the shade. They can take a little bit more partial shade, sun. They could sort of fit into that basket, but I'll throw them into the shade basket. For pots, hanging baskets, even smaller pots, these plants work really, really well. I know I've mentioned them on different our begonia show. I know I'll probably end up mentioning these as well, and they do so well in these different containers. So it's really a great option if you're looking for some shade plants. Check out Rieger begonias. I also have New Guinea on here, New Guinea impatiens. So whether they're going to be in a flat, you're going to get some smaller ones. They're going to go into planters or baskets. Regardless of where you want to use these, they're awesome shade plants. They're going to produce a lot of flower, as you can see in the picture here. They can really be covered with it. You want to keep these things well watered, and they're going to be happy all the way through your summer, even into the beginning of fall. They're going to still produce some flower. Next up, we got some sun plants. So this is really not covering, there's a ton of plants, annuals, perennials, whatever you're looking for. There's going to be a ton of different options that you can use for direct sunlight plants around your house, around your garden, whatever you're going to do. But the goal of this is to really just make you think about what areas you're looking to put some plants this coming spring, and then really give you a few quick ideas of, oh, maybe I haven't really thought about this or haven't tried this in the past, so let's give it a shot. Above me I've got Mandevilla. Mandevilla is just a staple of plants that you can throw directly into the sun. A lot of them are grown in the southern states, but there are a lot that are probably grown, the other portion is going to be grown in your local market. The Mandevilla are going to really thrive all the way through the summer. If you give them a ton of sunlight, direct sunlight, they're going to produce more flower. They're very binary in that way, where if they get more fertilizer and sunlight, they probably get bigger and they grow more and they have more flower power, is what I'm trying to say. So it's a really straightforward plant where, like, you give it this, you get that. It's an easier one to work with in that way. And of course they vine really well. So they end up being a great vining plant if you want them to go up a trellis or across a fence, across a railing. They're an awesome option. I have Calibacoas over here. So that's just a straight orange one, but they come in so many different colors: red, white, yellow. They'll come with like a yellow outside, but then a black inside of the flower. So there's a ton of different options that you can get. And usually, if you find them in a 10-inch basket, they're pretty cheap. They're at a really good price point. So if you're looking for something that can be a little bit less costly, still comes with all of that flower, they're an awesome option. They're really good for garden beds as well. if you want to put them near, let's say like a sidewalk, if you pick the right varieties in a 4 inch or in they can, I think they can come in flats. You don't see them as often in flats. You don't see flats as often anymore anyway. But if you're going to get them in, say, a 4 inch or a 6 inch, it will, it will spill across a whatever type of space you're looking to put it. Like if it's going across a sidewalk is kind of what I was thinking. Or if you want to make your own planters, throwing them into the side, they're going to trail right over the side of the pot. They are really great for direct sunlight, so they will be happy with it. And then I got sunflowers. There are some cool sunflower varieties that are coming to the market this spring. And sunflowers have come a long way. When we start to think of sunflowers, we think of like a whole, or in general, sometimes I think of a field of sunflowers, and then you've got all the large heads that they end up cultivating and they actually use for seed oils and that kind of a thing. And sunflower seeds, obviously. But the the sunflowers that they're going to use in potted varieties are likely going to be maybe a little bit shorter, but then they have more than just one head. They'll have 4 or 5 heads that are coming out. They're going to have a lot more flower. They're going to look great all the way through the middle of the summer, straight through. So they're an awesome option if you're looking for a something that might be overlooked. Like people kind of overlook sunflowers, or if I see sunflowers, they're usually the really, really, really tall ones, right? The ones that people want to see how high they can grow them. So if this is something that you've overlooked in the past, think about grabbing some sunflowers and toss 1 or 2 into your garden this coming spring. Okay, now I've got some partial options. So wax begonias there in the middle here, and I have to make myself a little smaller so you can see that. So you can see that, Kimberly. If you're listening, I'm just changing the size of my screen. Anyway, wax begonias, great for garden beds. Great for garden beds. They will end up spreading across a whole bed. Instead of getting very tall, they're going to mound a little bit, and then they're just going to start to spread. So they keep their nice habit. And if you are not looking to get a lot of height out of a certain plant, they're a great option. Dahlias are all the way over to my far right. They'll take some sun, shade, that kind of a mix. They come in some really great colors, and as you can see, the flower over there is absolutely beautiful. So there's a lot of different options, variegated, not variegated, but let's say a yellow with an orange or a yellow with a red. Those kind of different options if you're looking for something a little bit different. And then we've got a Kimberly, a very, a common plant, Kimberly Queen ferns. Nothing too fancy or special about them, but they will take that sunshade kind of mix. And depending on where they are grown in Florida, California, wherever you find yourself and wherever those houseplant and tropicals usually come from, some of them might be grown under shade, some of them might be grown in the direct sunlight. So you can grow them in different environments in different ways. It's worth asking a garden center if you're about to purchase a Kimberly if they were grown in the shade or in the sunlight. And that's because if you try to take a Kimberly that was grown in direct sun and put it into the shade, it might go into a little bit more shock, or vice versa. If it was grown in the shade, put it into the direct sun. Usually the second way that I've outlined, where it's grown in the shade, you put it in direct sun, there's a little bit more of a smooth transition there. It's kind of the opposite way where they can have a little bit more shock. But if you ask your local garden center or retailer, hey, were these Kimberleys grown in the sun or the shade? Usually, most of them, I'd say 90% are grown in shade, but it's worth a question, especially if you end up having a little bit of difficulties down the road with them. Definitely worth the question. Okay, that's all that I've got on shade versus sun plants. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a background as to why we have the two different types and exactly, just giving you a few ideas of what you should be looking for when you head out to fill up your garden this coming spring. If you have any questions, if this brought something up, if you want us to dive into something specific, plantcare.com club and fill out our question form. Look at the different blogs we have. We've got different shows on there as well, into a ton of different topics. So if you're looking for something, head over to our website and see if you can find your answer. If not, send us a message and we can go from there. Until next time, guys, thanks.